Morning.
Good morning.
Morning. Today another round of Get Connected sessions. Today is 7th of June 2024. Today we will be talking about E-Invoice. Okay? We will touch about practical issues or operational issues. More on operational issues. Because for the past few months we have been talking about a few rounds of E-Invoice on the basic knowledge. Okay? So let me introduce myself. My name is Mr. Koh Teck Peng. I'm a proof auditor and tax agent from KTPs. With me is Miss Lim. Miss Lim?
Hello, I'm Miss Lim, client relation representing KTP and THK.
Okay, I think as the topic says that today we're going to talk about FAQ on E-Invoice. So the first one, I think most of our clients will ask the implementation timeline. As you're aware, there are 3 timelines for E-Invoice. Okay, so the first is 1st of August.
This year,
2024. Second one is the 1st of
January
2025, and the third one is
1st of July 2025.
So of course, question will ask, some of our clients are SME below the threshold. So most of our clients, the timeline will fall on
next year,
2025. 1st of July 2025. The question asked normally will say some of clients they deal with SME, they deal with MNC, big corporation, listed co, either supplier or
client
debtors. Okay? Meaning listed co or MNC supply goods to our clients, or they sell goods to listed co and MNC. So the question is, should I implement together with them? As you're aware, because the coming August is the first
round of the implementation
E-Invoice. So, Ms. Lim.
From Mr. Ko's questions, the answer is depend. It is subjectical. So if you are as a suppliers, you can option voluntarily participate for earlier implementations of the E-Invoice if your business is ready.
This business is ready, okay.
Yes.
So I think it's Malaysia standard. It always says that we wait until last minute.
Correct.
Okay. So unless your multinational or your listed company require to do early. Otherwise, as a typical Malaysians, they will rather wait until the last minute. Meaning they will, if they are in the 3rd batch, definitely they will start in 3rd batch. Okay, I know the good word is voluntary, but as a typical Malaysian, I don't think Malaysia will do these silly things, right? Voluntary. Okay. Second thing is suppliers. My suppliers is coming August 2024. So should I? Something like that.
At that time, actually, it's not should or not should, because you are as a buyer. This implementations obligation actually falls under the supplier role. So you as a buyer, actually you just need to take note certain things for your supplier who is implement on 1st August 2024. Because as previous our webinar mentions about this E-Invoice, we know that the invoice issued by your supplier will be uploaded to IRBM portal for validations. So upon the validations approved by the IRB, the invoice, they will send the buyer a notifications. So you have to check the invoices details. For example, the descriptions, the item, the value. If you found there's when you receive the email, you check the invoice, you found any irregularities in the invoice, what you need to do as a buyer is you need to reject the invoices within a golden period, which is 72 hours. So in the event if there's no any rejection done, IRB will approve this invoice. So any adjustments or any cancellations is not allowed after the 72 golden hours.
I think based on our past with sharing on E-Invoice, there are certain deadline to comply. But currently, if you receive invoice from your suppliers, sometimes due to a work commitment, sometimes or you outsource to other party to do, it may take longest times, maybe 2 months, 3 months to rectify the dispute or something like that. So under the E-Invoice, everything will be what you call online.
Correct.
So as far as the buyer concerns, you have an obligation to check the invoice, because all the invoice from supplier they will send to a central. The central will send back to the buyers. So you as a buyer, you have obligation to check, to verify, and then
to reject.
So if anything goes wrong, you should go back to the central and something like that. So timeline is a bit tight. Okay.
Yeah.
So of course you still can wait until the third batch or thing like that in 2025. But as far as I say, if you're dealing with multinational company or you're dealing with listed co, chances are you will be touching E-Invoicing pretty soon. Okay. So my advice is always check your software vendors. If they have latest version, please upgrade to the latest versions. Right?
Yep.
Am I?
Yeah. Then,
so, anything you want to elaborate more?
Yeah, after the completions of the validations and non-rejection, without any rejections, you as a supplier, the supplier will share the E-Invoice to you as a buyer. So it's also a recommended steps. Once you receive the E-Invoice, there's a QR code indicated in the E-Invoice. Please scan it to make sure that the invoice is the genuine invoice and it's not a scam invoice. Yeah.
As I say, because from supplier to the central to the buyers, everything is verified, is done properly. They should have a proper QR code. So okay. Let's move to next question. Is also people ask a lot.
Yes.
Data fields. Okay. As we understood, your E-Invoice should have a total of 55. Okay. So so the law says, the law says you can refer back to the guideline issued by IRB. So question normally asked is, do I need to fill in all the fields, required fields in the E-Invoice? Okay, please.
For this data fields, on a total of 55 is quite a lot, honestly. So basically, it's not necessary to fill up all the fields. However, there's a mandatory fields required. For example, the company name, address, especially TIN number, the tax identifier number, and the company registration number or the IC number of an individual person. So the mandatory one is required to be filled in. I can take for example, a company is not the registered person for SSD. So there's a field for SSD registration number. You may not need to fill in. You can put an indicator as a NA, not applicable in that field.
So as I said, very simple. Supplier, RRB, server, thing like that, or central,
buyer.
You send an invoice. If the invoice do not contain the essentials data fields, you will turn down balik to
the supplier.
Okay, so my advice is upgrade your software system. Okay, for those who still use manual accounting, chances are nobody will do account for you. I was sad to say so, sad to say so. Because there are a lot of hoo-ha says that if I'm a hawker, how to comply. I think this one I will leave it to the authority to come up with guideline or clarifications. It's not for me to say anything. Okay. The third question is handwritten invoice still can be used under the era of E-Invoice? Okay, please.
For this handwritten invoice or issuance of receipt, okay, for those business owner transact B2B, which is business to business, actually this situation during E-Invoice era is no longer allowed. However, for issuance of the receipt, is still allowed for transaction involved from B to C, which is a business to consumer, those walk-in consumer. Okay, so at the end, after in terms of consolidated e-invoice, so at the end of the month, after you issue all the receipt during the month, and at the end of the month, you will consolidate all the receipts and submit the consolidated e-invoice to IRBM. As for handwritten, the guideline did not mention anything. It's silence on this handwritten. However, we actually not recommended for any handwritten invoice, as this one is a duplications of accounting work, and also worry that your handwritten may be unclear for accounting purpose.
就学 supplier, RRB, server, buyer. Okay. I'm not sure they still have the OCR technology or not, whether you can capture the written info. Okay. So for the time being, definitely you have to use a computerized accounting software to automate all these things. Okay. So especially in Johor Bahru, we have a neighbor called Singapore. So more and more account personnel is working in Malaysia, in Singapore. So you still go back to the old times. I think chances are very hard to get people to work in this industry. Okay. So always remember, because E-Invoice is for business. Okay.
Yes.
Because without the E-Invoice, your buyer cannot get tax deductions. So as far as consumer or personal, it's up to you whether you want to have an E-Invoice or not. Okay, but for supplier point of view, I think if you have a group of customers which comprise of business or consumers, I think it's very tedious to ask, do you want
E-Invoice?
Do you want
E-Invoice?
I think it's a silly questions, right? I think it's because even the consumers initially they say I don't need an E-Invoice. Okay?
But maybe one day,
one couple of hours later, they say they want to claim for the company expenses, something like that. So they still have to go back to supplier. The supplier still have to change the thing like that. So trouble, right?
Trouble, very trouble.
Right? Cari pasal aja. Okay, especially in Johor Bahru, accounting industry or account personnel is very high demand. You jangan cari pasal. Understand? Okay, then we talk about staff expenses and staff claims. of course, like our company, we do sponsors professional subscriptions like MIA, Malaysia Institute of Accountants, like ACCA. So of course, this like ACCA is from UK. Okay, they don't comply. They no need to comply with Malaysia's tax requirement like E-Invoice. Okay, definitely they will issue an invoice, normal invoice under
employees.
Let's say my name, personal name. Okay, okay. So MIA different, MIA. Okay, but as you come to because personal subscriptions. Okay, so I think it's very tedious. Every time you claim let's say I want to claim MIA subscription, I have to put in the company name, right? So, how can you explain under this new coming E-invoicing? What should I do?
Okay, businesses or company may encounter a situation where, as Mr. Koh mentioned just now, the employee benefit where they have the professional subscriptions under the name of employee. So under this situation, actually the best recommended way is that the name should be put under the taxpayer, the businesses, the company. But under this situation is unavoidable because the subscription is under the individual person. So Inland Revenue Board in the guideline, they actually give a concession, granted a concessions for the invoice to be under the employee name. It's given a concession. So that is the secondary options if in the first place you are unable to put it under the name of the company.
So meaning we still carry on the current practice lah?
Yes, it still can carry on the current practice, but it's recommended the company to implement policy. First of all, you have to identify Mr. Koh is the employee of the company.
So this still come back to your employment handbooks or employment manuals whereby you specify all the conditions for reimbursement or claiming your professional subscriptions.
Correct.
Because KTP, we have very thick of employment handbook, but most of the SME, I think when new employers start working, they only have 2 pages of
employment
letters. Okay, I think for SME, maybe you should take note to generate a policy. I don't say the employment handbook, at least you come out a memo or come out policies on this professional subscriptions. Right?
Yeah.
So the second thing is expenses billed under employees' names. Very simple scenario is like employees entertain the clients, having a meal in restaurants. So definitely the invoice definitely will come out in the name of employees. Okay, so of course you can ask that when you want make payment, can you issue the name? But I don't know McDonald's or KFC allow this or not, huh? Right? I don't know. So under these circumstances, what is it?
Under these circumstances, we suggested for the company to educate your employee. As we mentioned just now, first, the general rule is that the e-invoice should be stated under the names of the company, the businesses. If not, it's under the name of the, under this case, you have to educate your employee, correct? So, or you make your information available to your employee. So at the point of time when they ask for the e-invoice, they have the companies, the businesses information for the suppliers or the service provider to issue the e-invoice directly under the name of the company. This is the recommended way you make your company information available. If not, if it's under the name of the employee, yes, the e-invoice is still acceptable. And of course, we recommend the company to implement policy on the claiming procedures. Claiming by end of the month, because usually as a salesman, when you entertain your clients, all the claims will be done at the month end. Maybe we have the claim forms, you have to fill in the claim form. So all these policies have to state it down maybe in your manual, your handbook, or the memo for your staff, your employee, to well aware the claiming procedures. Yes.
So still come back to the same questions, the previous questions. So e-invoice, most of our clients thought that e-invoice is accounting problems. So as we highlight these two issues on professional subscriptions or expenses billed under the employee's name, it falls under the HR department. If you have a HR division, thing like that, or if HR should know all the implication or invoicing on HR matters. Okay, because for big company, when you have a qualified HR, normally they have a handbooks, they have a memo in line with the changes of the e-invoice. Or even they have procedures or things like that. For SME client, normally I would say, of course, best practice is to have a employment handbook or things like that. But because you're SME, things like that, sometimes your HR is also your account personnel, things like that. So as I say, normally it's good to have a SOP, the memo, thing like that. So documentation is very important. Okay? So expenses paid on behalf of employer. Okay, it's very simple. Employee travel overseas, say Singapore, or for business trip, and claim hotel expenses, things like that. Singapore, they don't have
e-invoice.
Singapore have e-invoice coming soon already. Okay, but let's say some country they don't have e-invoice. So how?
Okay, so if you have any overseas expenses paid on behalf, for example, the accommodation, the hotel stays for business trip, actually the invoice received by, issued by the foreign supplier is acceptable, because this one IRB given a concession to accept this invoice issued by foreign supplier. And then supposingly any transaction with foreign supplier, you are required to issue a self-bill. But under this situation, it was exempted. You don't need to issue the self-bill. So this is what written in the guideline.
So if you are not familiar with the self-bill, please refer back to our past webinars on self-bill. Okay. So so any others?
No.
So I think more or less we cover the FAQ. Of course, more FAQ will come up in coming weeks.
Yes.
Okay, stay tuned and please follow our social medias. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.